The massive research vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Its smooth, silver hull reflected the distant sunlight as it glided silently toward the third planet. Inside, the alien crew watched with curiosity as the blue-green world grew larger on their viewing screens. None of them expected this routine survey mission to change the course of galactic history forever. Captain James stood at attention in the United Nations Defense Chamber, his weathered face illuminated by the emergency lights that bathed the room in an eerie red glow. "Sir, the object has passed Mars' orbit and is heading straight for Earth," he reported, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. The assembled military leaders from various nations watched as the massive ship appeared on their tracking systems. The aliens had chosen to appear directly above New York City. Their ship, nearly 2 miles long, cast a shadow over the busy streets below. People stopped and stared upward, phones recording the historic moment. Military jets circled at a safe distance, weapons armed but not locked. The world held its breath. First contact should have been a moment of celebration. The aliens had prepared for centuries to meet new species, developing universal translation devices and peaceful greeting protocols. But they hadn't counted on human instinct, the deep-seated survival mechanisms that had kept the species alive through countless threats. When the alien delegation emerged from their ship, their traditional greeting gesture, raising all 4 arms with exposed nerve clusters glowing, triggered an immediate response in the human security team. To alien eyes, exposing their vital organs was the ultimate sign of trust. To human warriors, it looked like an attack stance. "Get down," James shouted, tackling the UN Secretary General as energy pulses erupted from the aliens' nerve clusters, another part of their peaceful greeting display. Human security forces, seeing what appeared to be weapons fire, responded instantly. The air filled with bullets and energy beams. The aliens retreated in shock and confusion. Their protective shields, designed to defend against energy weapons, proved surprisingly vulnerable to primitive kinetic projectiles. 3 of their delegation fell before they could reach their ship. The humans, displaying speed that stunned the aliens, had already taken cover and were coordinating their response with hand signals and short verbal commands. James watched in horror as the situation spiraled out of control. He tried to call for a ceasefire, but in the chaos, no one could tell friend from foe. The alien ship's defensive systems activated, creating a hemisphere of energy that pushed back the gathering military forces. However, human soldiers quickly discovered they could slide objects under the shield's edge, where it met the ground. Within minutes, human military forces had adapted their tactics. They worked in teams, some distracting the alien defenses while others explored weaknesses. The aliens watched in disbelief as these primitives, who had barely reached space, systematically probed their defenses with increasing effectiveness. "They're learning too fast," the alien commander reported to the Galactic Council through emergency channels. "Their response time is unprecedented. They're already developing countermeasures to our technology." The fear in the commander's voice was clear. These humans weren't just fighting back. They were adapting, improving, becoming more dangerous with each passing minute. The battle ended as abruptly as it began. The alien ship retreated to high orbit, leaving behind their fallen delegates and a changed world. In just 30 minutes of conflict, humanity had demonstrated combat capabilities that terrified their would-be visitors. James stood in the aftermath, watching the ship diminish to a point of light in the sky. Around him, soldiers were already collecting alien equipment, studying it, learning from it. He noticed how quickly his men had adapted to fighting the unknown, how smoothly they had switched tactics when conventional methods failed. The general placed a hand on James's shoulder. "Tell me the truth, Captain. How did your team respond so effectively?" James looked at the alien bodies being carefully covered and removed for study. "Sir, we've trained for this. Every science fiction movie, every combat simulation, every crazy theory about alien invasion, we used them all as training scenarios. While they were studying us as an unknown species, we had spent generations imagining how to fight them. In high orbit, the alien commander sent his final report to the Council. Most species we encounter need to be taught about war. These humans, they need to be taught about peace. And I fear that lesson may cost the galaxy dearly. The Galactic Council's science vessel orbited Jupiter, keeping a safe distance from Earth while conducting their research. Inside the ship's main laboratory, alien scientists gathered around a holographic display showing human biological data. They had spent 3 months studying transmissions from Earth, analyzing human behavior, and examining the fallen bodies of their own kind. "Impossible," muttered the lead researcher as he reviewed the data again. "Their bodies shouldn't be able to do this." He gestured at the display, which showed a human marathon runner completing a race. Next to it, footage from Earth showed soldiers carrying heavy packs through desert heat. The research team had discovered something unprecedented. Humans weren't just dangerous because of their weapons or tactics. Their very biology was built for warfare. While other species evolved to avoid conflict, humans had evolved to excel at it. Back on Earth, Captain James led a team examining the alien technology left behind after the disastrous first contact. They had already learned to activate several devices, and engineers worldwide were reverse engineering the alien materials. What had taken other species centuries to develop, humans were figuring out in weeks. "Look at this, Captain," called Dr. Stone, holding up what appeared to be an alien medical device. "Their healing technology is advanced, but they designed it for bodies that shut down when damaged. They never conceived of a species that could keep fighting while injured." James nodded, remembering battlefield medics who worked through their own wounds to save others. He had seen soldiers continue fighting with broken bones, and runners complete marathons despite exhaustion. The aliens' research was revealing just how unique these human traits were. In the Council ship's observation room, the alien commander watched recordings of human combat training. They deliberately practiced fighting. He asked in disbelief. And these sports, they willingly engage in physical combat for entertainment. The footage showed boxing matches, martial arts tournaments, and military exercises. To the aliens' horror, humans even trained their young in combat sports. No other known species deliberately sought out conflict as a way to improve themselves. The scientists made another shocking discovery while studying human history. They found that humans had developed weapons before creating many basic tools, where other species had invented farming equipment and then later adapted it for warfare. Humans had created spears for hunting and fighting, only later turning their combat innovations toward peaceful purposes. "Their pattern recognition is extraordinary," one scientist reported to the Council. "In our combat simulations, most species take thousands of attempts to identify weaknesses. Humans spot patterns in minutes. They don't just learn from their mistakes. They anticipate problems before they happen." The aliens watched in fascination as humans demonstrated this ability in real time. Military analysts had already identified patterns in alien shield technology and were developing new weapons to exploit them. Engineers studied alien metal alloys and were creating their own versions in laboratories worldwide. But what truly terrified the Council was human endurance. Footage showed human hunters in Africa pursuing prey for days, never stopping until their target collapsed from exhaustion. This persistence hunting had shaped human evolution, creating a species that could outlast any opponent. "They don't know how to give up," the commander told his superiors. "Other species retreat when tired or injured. Humans have learned to ignore their body's warnings. They keep fighting long after our biological models say they should be incapacitated." In the Council's secure meeting chamber, the debate raged. Some argued for immediate action to contain the human threat. Others insisted on more research. But all agreed on one thing: they had never encountered a species like this before. Dr. Stone's team made another discovery that sent shockwaves through the alien research community. Humans could form emotional bonds with inanimate objects, treating their weapons and vehicles almost like living allies. This ability to pack bond with artificial constructs made them even more effective with technology. "We designed our weapons to be efficient," the lead researcher explained to the council. "Humans design their weapons to be companions. They name their ships, talk to their guns, treat their tanks like living creatures. This emotional connection makes them more effective warriors than any purely logical approach." As the council debated humanity's fate, they didn't realize they were running out of time to make a decision. Every day they spent studying humans was another day humanity spent preparing for the next encounter. And humans had learned more from one brief battle than the aliens had expected them to learn in years. The first shots of the Galactic War weren't fired by humans. A militant faction of the Council, calling themselves the Defense Alliance, launched a surprise attack on Earth's moon base. They expected an easy victory against the primitive human outpost. They were wrong. The moon base crew, led by Captain James, had spent months preparing for this possibility. Using reverse-engineered alien technology combined with human ingenuity, they had turned the seemingly defenseless research station into a fortress. The Alliance ships flew right into a trap. "They're using the moon's craters as weapon emplacements," reported the Alliance commander in disbelief. His ship's sensors showed human fighters launching from hidden bunkers, using the moon's low gravity to execute maneuvers that should have been impossible. The humans had done something no other species had considered. They had turned the entire moon into a weapon. They used the lunar dust to blind alien sensors. Hidden railguns fired from crater rims, and maintenance tunnels served as surprise attack routes. In orbit, Admiral Reed coordinated Earth's response. The planet's nations had united after first contact, pooling their military resources. Now that preparation paid off. Earth's first space fleet emerged from hiding spots throughout the solar system. The ships looked crude compared to alien vessels, but they carried centuries of human combat experience. "Spread out and maintain irregular patterns," Reed ordered. The human ships moved in ways that confused alien targeting systems. Where Alliance ships flew in precise formations, human vessels darted about like angry wasps. They had studied alien combat doctrine and deliberately did the opposite of what their enemies expected. The Alliance discovered another human trait the hard way. Their ships were designed to disable enemy vessels with precision strikes to key systems. But humans had built their ships like the tanks of old. They could keep fighting even when half destroyed. A human captain, his bridge exposed to space, and wearing only an emergency suit, rammed his dying vessel into an Alliance carrier. "They're insane," shouted an Alliance officer as he watched the human ships fight on despite crippling damage. "Don't they understand their vessels are too damaged to continue?" What the aliens didn't grasp was that humans understood perfectly well. They simply refused to give up. The battle spread through the solar system. Human ships used the asteroid belt as cover, laying traps and launching ambushes. They turned every piece of space debris into a potential weapon. The Alliance's superior technology meant nothing against an enemy that used the environment itself as a weapon. On Earth, military commanders noticed something crucial about the alien tactics. The Alliance relied heavily on their central command structure. When humans managed to disrupt their communications, individual alien ships became far less effective. Human crews, trained to think independently, took full advantage of this weakness. James watched from the moon base as human ingenuity changed the face of space warfare. His engineers had figured out how to use the aliens' own shield technology against them, creating frequency mismatches that made their defenses collapse. Every time the Alliance adapted, humans found a new way to fight. "Sir, they're retreating," reported a sensor officer. The Alliance fleet, despite outnumbering the humans, had lost their advantage. They hadn't expected humans to sacrifice ships to win battles. They hadn't expected crews to keep fighting in ships that were barely functional. Most of all, they hadn't expected humans to turn their own technology against them so quickly. The Defense Alliance retreated to regroup, but they had learned costly lessons. Humans didn't follow the normal rules of warfare. They didn't rely on standard tactics. Every human ship captain seemed to fight differently, making their attacks impossible to predict. As the Alliance ships vanished into hyperspace, Admiral Reed sent a message to all human forces. Remember this victory. We've shown them that humanity doesn't need the most advanced ships or the best weapons. We have something better. We have the will to fight on when others would surrender, the creativity to find solutions where none seem to exist, and the courage to face impossible odds. The first major space battle was over, but the war had only begun, and humanity had proven that they were far deadlier than anyone in the galaxy had imagined. The council chambers erupted in chaos as reports from different worlds poured in. Human forces had spread beyond their solar system, and they were fighting in ways that defied all military logic. They didn't just adapt to different environments. They thrived in them. On the ice world of Frost 7, Alliance troops had expected their cold weather gear to give them an advantage. Instead, they found humans using the freezing temperatures as a weapon. Human soldiers, drawing on centuries of Arctic warfare experience, dug tunnels in the ice and staged ambushes from beneath the frozen surface. They can fight in any environment, reported a shaken Alliance commander. We found them operating in volcanic regions that should be too hot for any species. They work in teams to rotate through high-temperature zones, keeping constant pressure on our forces. The Council watched footage of human Marines fighting in the methane swamps of Delta II. Where other species required complex environmental suits, humans had modified simple breathing gear to work in the toxic atmosphere. They'd moved through the swamps like ghosts, using the poisonous environment to their advantage. But what truly frightened the Council was discovering that humans treated combat as entertainment. An Alliance spy brought back recordings of something called paintball, humans practicing warfare for fun. They couldn't comprehend a species that willingly spent their free time simulating battle. Captain James led a demonstration for captured Alliance officers, showing them human martial arts. The aliens watched in horror as humans deliberately struck each other in practice matches. You intentionally attack each other to learn, one officer asked, unable to grasp the concept of sparring. How else would we learn to fight? James replied, not realizing how his casual answer would send shockwaves through the alien command structure. No other species had developed the concept of practice combat. Their troops trained with simulations, but never risked injury in training. The Alliance's fear grew when they discovered human combat sports. Recordings of boxing matches and mixed martial arts tournaments spread through alien networks. Species that evolved to avoid physical harm couldn't understand why humans would voluntarily engage in hand-to-hand combat for sport. Admiral Reed's fleet engaged Alliance forces in an asteroid field. The alien ships, programmed to follow safe navigation protocols, were shocked to see human vessels diving through gaps barely wider than their hulls. Human pilots, raised on video games and flight simulators, treated the deadly obstacle course like a challenge to overcome. They're using mining ships as weapons, reported an Alliance sensor officer. Human engineers had transformed civilian vessels into combat craft, adding improvised weapons and armor. The aliens couldn't understand how humans could repurpose tools so quickly, not realizing that humanity's entire history was built on turning everyday items into weapons. In the vacuum of space, human soldiers demonstrated another terrifying ability. Their spacewalks lasted longer than any other species, their movements more precise in zero gravity. Generations of space station construction had taught humans how to work in the void. Now they used those skills to board and capture alien vessels. The Council received reports of humans fighting in conditions that should have been impossible. They operated in high-gravity environments that would crush other species. They survived in radiation zones that should have been lethal. Their troops kept fighting even when their supply lines were cut, adapting to use local resources in ways no one had thought possible. Do you understand now? Asked a human prisoner when questioned about their capabilities. Every environment is hostile to someone. We've spent our entire history learning to survive where we shouldn't be able to. Space isn't special. It's just another hostile environment to overcome. The Alliance's best combat instructors studied human fighting techniques with growing alarm. Humans had developed thousands of different ways to fight, each adapted to specific situations. While other species sought to perfect a single combat style, humans had created countless methods of warfare. As reports of human adaptability spread, more council species began to question the wisdom of continuing the war. Some suggested that a species this capable at warfare must be contained. Others argued that making an enemy of humanity would be the last mistake the galaxy ever made. The Council's chief anthropologist stared at the holographic display, his four hands trembling as he presented his findings. The room fell silent as images from human history filled the screen. Thousands of years of warfare scrolled past, each more terrifying than the last. They've been fighting wars for their entire recorded history, he explained to the assembled council members. Where we developed technology to improve life, they developed it to become better at fighting. Their greatest scientific advances came during their wars. The display showed the evolution of human weapons, from simple stone tools to nuclear devices. The aliens watched in horror as humans went from throwing spears to splitting atoms in just a few thousand years. No other species had advanced their military technology so rapidly. But this is what truly sets them apart, the anthropologist continued, bringing up new images. They have a concept called total war, where their entire society mobilizes for combat. Every resource, every person, every industry focuses on the war effort. Captain James stood in an alien library, explaining human history to a group of council scholars. They had asked about Earth's greatest generals, expecting tales of brilliant tactical minds. Instead, James told them about ordinary soldiers, about farmers who became warriors, about civilians who built weapons in factories. "You don't understand," James said, seeing their confusion. "Our greatest weapon isn't our military leaders. It's our ability to turn everyone into a warrior when needed. During our world wars, grandmothers made bullets, children collected scrap metal, and scientists worked day and night to create new weapons." The council watched recordings of human military training. They saw soldiers crawling through mud under live ammunition, sailors practicing damage control in flooded ship compartments, pilots pulling high-G maneuvers until they nearly blacked out. The aliens couldn't comprehend a species that deliberately pushed themselves to their physical limits. "They trained to fight while injured," reported a medical observer. "Their combat medics practice treating wounds in the worst possible conditions. They simulate equipment failures, loss of communications, and every kind of disaster. Then they do it all again in darkness, in bad weather, under enemy fire." The anthropologist's presentation reached Earth's modern era. The council saw humans fighting in every environment: deserts, jungles, mountains, Arctic wastes. They watched soldiers operate in chemical warfare gear, work through exhaustion, and continue fighting despite injuries that would stop any other species. "Look at their entertainment," he said, showing clips of human movies and games. "They spend their free time imagining new kinds of warfare. Even their children play at combat. They've created countless scenarios of alien invasions, preparing themselves for wars that hadn't even happened yet." In a secure council facility, alien psychologists studied human prisoners. They discovered that humans could form intense bonds with fellow soldiers in just days, creating effective fighting units in the time it took other species to complete basic training. Humans called it brotherhood forged in combat, a concept no other species had. "Their history is an endless cycle of war and peace," the anthropologist continued. "But here's what makes them unique. They learn from every conflict. Each war teaches them new lessons, makes them more effective warriors. Other species try to forget their wars. Humans study them." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some argued that such a warlike species could never be trusted. Others pointed out that humans also built great works of art and literature between their wars. But all agreed on one thing: they had severely underestimated humanity's capacity for warfare. As the meeting continued, a junior researcher made a discovery that silenced the room. Human medical records showed that their soldiers could continue fighting with injuries that would incapacitate any other species. Their bodies produced chemicals during combat that blocked pain and enhanced performance. They were, quite literally, built for warfare. Now you see why they're so dangerous, the anthropologist concluded. We've spent generations trying to prevent war. They've spent generations preparing for it. We see war as a failure of civilization. They see it as a crucible that makes them stronger. And that makes them the deadliest warriors the galaxy has ever known. The Alliance never saw the killing blow coming. Their command center, hidden in an asteroid base they thought was secret, went dark during the night shift. By the time nearby forces responded, human special forces had already vanished, leaving behind a heavily damaged facility and stolen command codes. They came through the ventilation system, reported the base commander, still shocked at the humans' audacity. They crawled through toxic gas lines wearing improvised breathing gear. Who would even think to try that? The answer, of course, was humans, a species that viewed every obstacle as a challenge to overcome. Admiral Reed launched humanity's counteroffensive the next day. With stolen Alliance codes, Earth's ships appeared as friendly signals on enemy scanners. The humans had learned this trick from their own history, remembering ancient warriors who wore enemy colors to sneak past defenses. Multiple ships appearing at all sectors, reported an Alliance coordinator. Their fleet, spread thin trying to contain human expansion, found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Human vessels jumped in and out of hyperspace rapidly, striking from unexpected angles, never staying still long enough to be targeted. The Alliance's carefully organized command structure became their greatest weakness. Their ships waited for orders while human captains made instant decisions based on changing situations. Every human vessel acted like an independent warrior, coordinating with others, but never relying on central command to think for them. Captain James led a strike team against an Alliance shipyard. His engineers had modified their ship's engines to run silent, another trick learned from submarine warfare in Earth's oceans. They drifted past enemy sensors using minimal power, looking like space debris until they were too close to stop. "They're using our own ships against us," an Alliance admiral reported in disbelief. Humans had captured several enemy vessels intact and learned to pilot them within days. They mixed these stolen ships with their fleet, making it impossible for the Alliance to know friend from foe until it was too late. The Council watched in growing alarm as humanity's combat doctrine spread across space. Other species began copying human tactics, learning to think independently in battle. The Alliance's technological advantage meant nothing against an enemy that could adapt faster than they could develop new weapons. "Sir, we're detecting unusual power readings," reported a sensor operator aboard the Alliance flagship. The humans had discovered a way to overload captured ships' reactors, turning them into makeshift bombs. They sent these ships on autopilot into enemy formations, forcing the Alliance to fire on vessels that appeared to be their own. In the Centauri sector, human forces demonstrated another terrifying ability. When the Alliance cut off their supply lines, the humans didn't retreat. Instead, they raided enemy bases for resources, living off captured supplies like raiders of old. They turned the Alliance's own territory into their hunting ground. "How do they keep fighting?" demanded the Alliance Supreme Commander. His forces had superior numbers, better technology, and controlled most of the supply routes. But humans treated these disadvantages as mere inconveniences, finding ways to win that no military academy had ever taught. The turning point came at the Battle of Proxima. Alliance forces, following standard doctrine, formed a perfect defensive sphere around the star system. They expected the humans to either retreat from their superior numbers or launch a desperate frontal assault. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. Every human ship jumped to a different location, attacking simultaneously from hundreds of directions. There was no formation, no clear strategy that the Alliance could counter. Each human captain fought their own battle, instinctively supporting nearby allies while pursuing their own objectives. "We lost contact with the flagship," reported an Alliance officer. The humans had targeted command and control ships first, using the confusion to split enemy formations into isolated groups. Without central coordination, the Alliance fleet broke apart into individual units, exactly how humans preferred to fight. As their carefully planned defense crumbled, the Alliance commanders finally understood their fundamental mistake. They had built their military to fight traditional wars, with clear front lines and organized strategies. But humans didn't fight traditional wars. They brought chaos to every battlefield, thriving in the disorder they created. The Council's emergency session lasted for 3 days. Reports of Alliance defeats piled up as they debated what to do about the human problem. The species they had once dismissed as primitive had proven to be the deadliest warriors in known space. Now they faced a crucial decision: continue a war they couldn't win or admit their mistake. "We understand war because we hate it," Captain James told the Council representatives during the peace talks. He stood in the Great Chamber, his uniform still bearing scars from recent battles. "Every human dreams of peace, but we prepare for war because we know that being weak invites aggression." The Council members watched recordings of Earth's history again, but this time they looked deeper. Between the wars, they saw how humans rebuilt, how enemies became allies, how soldiers turned back into builders and creators. They began to understand that humanity's warrior nature was only part of their story. "Your people are a contradiction," said the Council leader. "You fight with unmatched ferocity, yet you show mercy to defeated enemies. You prepare endlessly for war, yet you cherish peace. You are the galaxy's greatest warriors, but you long to be more than that." Admiral Reed's fleet now protected the very worlds they had fought against months earlier. Human ships patrolled trade routes, keeping pirates at bay. Their reputation alone was enough to deter most threats. The galaxy's deadliest warriors had become its most effective peacekeepers. "We're establishing a new training program," James announced to a group of alien military officers. The Council had requested that humans teach other species their combat techniques, not to make them better at war, but to help them understand how to prevent it. In the training facilities on Mars, alien soldiers learned human martial arts. They discovered that humans didn't train for combat just to become better warriors. They did it to understand themselves, to build discipline, to learn when not to fight. The aliens began to see combat training as a path to peace. "The most important lesson we can teach you isn't how to fight," James explained to his alien students. "It's understanding why people fight. When you know what causes war, you can better preserve peace." The aliens watched as human instructors demonstrated how to diffuse conflicts before they turned violent. The Council made another surprising discovery about humans. Despite being natural warriors, they preferred to solve problems without violence when possible. Their history showed that the same determination that made them deadly in combat also made them persistent in seeking peaceful solutions. "Humans have something we lack," admitted the Alliance's former Supreme Commander. "They understand both war and peace intimately. They know the price of conflict better than any of us, because they've paid it so many times. That knowledge makes them the perfect guardians of peace." On Earth, the changes were just as profound. Humans had found their place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Their ships still carried weapons, but now they used them to defend the weak and maintain order. Their warrior skills served a greater purpose. "We're establishing a new galactic defense force," announced Admiral Reed to a joint human-alien crew. "Our mission isn't to wage war, but to prevent it. We'll be the shield that protects civilization, the deterrent that makes aggressors think twice." The Council's archives recorded this pivotal moment in galactic history. The species they had feared as unstoppable warriors had become the foundation of lasting peace. Humans still trained for combat, still prepared for the worst, but now they taught others how to defend themselves without losing themselves to violence. "Remember this," James told the class of mixed species at the new Defense Academy. "Being good at war isn't about loving violence. It's about understanding it so well that you know how to prevent it." Humanity learned this lesson the hard way. Now we can help others learn it through wisdom rather than pain. As the galaxy entered a new era of peace, the Council finally understood the truth about humanity. They weren't just the deadliest warriors in space, they were also its most determined peacekeepers, because only those who truly understand war can truly appreciate peace.